On the night of August 9th, 2026, inside Sobeys Stadium in Toronto, the overwhelming majority of fans in the stands were chanting for one player. It was not the one who won. Belinda Bencic, ranked No. 14 in the world, beat the crowd favorite in straight sets. Then she walked to the microphone. And she said something that few people expected from a player who had just silenced an entire stadium of opposing supporters. What she said next spread quickly across tennis social media. Not because it was controversial. For exactly the opposite reason. Here is how the night unfolded. It was the fourth round of the 2026 National BankOpen, a WTA 1000 event in Toronto. Alex Eala, the 21-year-old Filipina, walked in on a career-best 7-match winning streak. Her opponent was Bencic, a 29-year-old Swiss veteran and Tokyo Olympic gold medalist. Eala had already survived 2 consecutive 3-set matches to get here, including a tough win over American caddy McNally that needed a medical timeout for a right ankle injury. That fatigue, combined with the injury, appeared to catch up with her. Bencic won the match 6-4, 6-0. Eala's run was over. So was her shot at a quarterfinal against 4th-ranked Coco Gauff. But the scoreline was not the story. What happened after the final point was, center court was filled almost entirely with fans supporting Eala. Bencic addressed them anyway. In her own words, she said, "I know most of you guys were cheering for Alex, but I still have to say it was very nice for me to play in front of you all. Thank you so much for the great crowd tonight." She also thanked the smaller group that had been cheering for her. In a stadium that had been almost uniformly behind her opponent, that moment was widely shared and discussed online in the hours that followed. Not as controversy, as sportsmanship. There was also a smaller, stranger detail buried inside the win. Bencic improved to 10-0 against left-handed opponents since 2024, a stat that reportedly left her surprised, given that Eala plays left-handed. She said facing another lefty, Taylor Townsend, in the round before had helped her adjust to the serve pattern she would later see from Eala. Now step back. Because this single match did not happen in a vacuum. It happened inside one of the wildest weeks women's tennis has seen all year. Just days earlier, the biggest name in the sport had already gone down. Aryna Sabalenka, world No. 1 since October 2024 and the owner of back-to-back year-end top rankings, lost in the round of 16 to Ekaterina Alexandrova, then ranked outside the top 15. It was reportedly a 3-set battle, and it fit a pattern that had defined Sabalenka's entire 2026 season, one that already included a 4th-round exit at the French Open to Diana Schneider, and an inconsistent run through the clay court swing. For Alexandrova, beating Sabalenka was reportedly her 3rd career win over a reigning world No. 1, after wins over Iga Swiatek in 2024 and Sabalenka again in Doha in 2025. Afterward, Alexandrova explained her mindset in her own words, "I didn't have any expectations, I was trying to risk as much as possible." Nuta No. 3, Jessica Pegula, the top-ranked American in the draw, also exited that same round, losing to Schneider. Sabalenka's early exit added to a season that had already produced a reported 4-6 record in 3-set matches, a number that raised real questions about her consistency, even while her ranking stayed untouched, built on 2 years of results banked before this slump began. With the top seed gone, and one of the tournament's biggest stars gone with her, attention in Toronto turned somewhere else entirely. It turned to Eala. Her path here did not start in Toronto. It started in Quezon City, Philippines, where she built her ranking from nothing up to a career high of No. 20 in the world. That rise has reportedly been noticed well outside tennis circles too, including a spot on a Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list and a Vogue magazine feature. Earlier in this same hard court season, she became the first Filipina ever to win a WTA title, beating Jessica Pegula at the Washington, D.C. Open. None of it came easy. According to reports, the WTA had asked her to withdraw from an earlier event in Birmingham. She signed a waiver, paid a fine, and played anyway. That single decision says a lot about the physical toll of a breakout season on a still-developing 21-year-old body. And then there are the crowds. The crowds are their own story. Go back to the Australian Open in January 2026. Eala's main draw debut was scheduled for an outer court, Court 6. Instead, queues reportedly stretched back toward Rod Laver Arena. Hundreds of fans were turned away once the court hit capacity. Even her practice sessions got mobbed. Olympic gold medalist Monica Puig, watching courtside, reportedly summed up the scene in one word: wild. Later in the season, in Dubai, fans reportedly started arriving at 11 a.m. for a match that did not start until 7 p.m. The tournament sold out on her presence alone. By the time Eala reached Washington, D.C. in early August, she won the Mubadala DC Open outright, beating Pegula in the final to become the first Filipina to capture a WTA singles title. That result carried straight into Toronto. According to National BankOpen tournament director Carl Hale, speaking to Tennis Channel, ticket demand for Eala's opening match blew past the 800-seat capacity of the tournament's second biggest court. Organizers had to move her to center court instead. In his own words, Hale explained it plainly: "We can't put her on there because she probably sold upwards of 5,000 tickets." He also said it was the first time in his career that a tournament had added a food offering midway through an event because of one single player. Reportedly a nod to the Filipino menu items added at Sobeys Stadium. Her matches in Toronto reportedly sold out within 30 minutes of being scheduled, filling a center court that seats roughly 10,000. That kind of popularity has not gone unquestioned. Coverage of the tournament noted that some online critics have called her overhyped, given that her results, strong as they are, still sit outside tennis's traditional elite tier. Other players see it differently. Naomi Osaka, after watching a practice court fill to capacity just because Eala was on it, reportedly said, "I think it's great." Coco Gauff, a potential quarterfinal opponent in Toronto, was also described as appreciating both her game and the attention she brings to the sport. Earlier in the season, Caddy McNally, after losing to Eala in a 3-set match in Washington, was described as telling her she was thankful to be part of the moment, a remark Eala called kind and gracious in her post-match press conference. There is also a quieter contrast worth pointing out. Bencic herself did not arrive in Toronto as some overmatched underdog. She is a 29-year-old veteran who reached a career-high ranking of No. 4 back in February 2020, years before Eala turned professional, and went on to win an Olympic gold medal in singles at the Tokyo Games, along with a silver in doubles. She reached the semi-finals of the 2025 Wimbledon Championships, losing to eventual champion Iga Swiatek, and arrived in Toronto having already beaten Americans Sloane Stephens and Taylor Townsend in the earlier rounds. None of that generates the ticket-selling frenzy now attached to Eala's name. But it is exactly the kind of sustained, results-based that rankings are built to measure. Reporting ahead of their match noted that the two players' games actually share a lot in common stylistically, both liking early ball contact and grinding baseline rallies, but that they differ sharply in one thing: Eala feeds off a loud, partisan crowd, while Bencic has reportedly preferred it quiet, a preference that was already public knowledge after clips of her reacting to noisy crowds in an earlier round had circulated online. That contrast is exactly what made her post-match words, thanking a crowd that had been almost entirely against her, land the way they did. So which one of them is actually defining the sport right now? That question does not have one clean answer, and it should not. On one side sits the objective measure. Rankings are built on points, results, and consistency over time. By that standard, Sabalenka's 94 weeks at the top of the rankings and her back-to-back year-end finishes at No. 1 are not up for debate. Critics who push back on Eala's rising profile point out correctly that she has not reached a Grand Slam final, let alone won one, and that her career-high ranking still sits at No. 20. On the other side sits a different kind of measure entirely: impact, drawing power, and the ability to pull new audiences into the sport. Sold-out stadiums, packed press conferences, and endorsements from established stars all point to a form of relevance that ranking points simply do not capture. Both sides are right. Rankings measure performance inside the sport. Attention measures the sport's reach beyond its usual audience. Tennis, like every major sport, ultimately needs both to survive. How Eala has handled all of this attention has become as much a part of her story as her results. After the loss to Bencic, in a match played in front of an overwhelmingly pro-Eala crowd, reporting described her as staying grateful for her breakthrough season and for the ongoing support of Filipino fans, despite the setback. She reportedly summed up the match simply as tough one today. No drama. No excuses. Earlier in the tournament, after her 3-set win over McNally, she had addressed the crowd directly, saying in her own words, "To play in front of you guys, it's amazing," adding that the emotional weight of that support made every match feel bigger to her. That combination, a punishing physical schedule, a rapidly growing spotlight, and a consistently level-headed public response, has been noted again and again by people covering the tour as a sign of real maturity. If anything, it has only made her more popular, not less. Zoom out even further, and Toronto starts to look like a snapshot of something bigger happening in women's tennis right now. A sport long anchored by fan bases in Europe, North America, and Australia is reportedly seeing real growth in Southeast Asia, driven in large part by the pull around Eala, with tournament directors from Melbourne to Dubai to Toronto adjusting court assignments, food offerings, and match scheduling specifically because of an audience that barely factored into ticket sales a year ago. None of that takes anything away from Sabalenka, whose ranking is the product of years of results at the very top of the sport. What it does suggest is that the two measures of significance in tennis, points on a table and demand at a box office, are now running on separate but overlapping tracks. And 1 week in Toronto was enough to produce headlines built on both. Despite the loss to Bencic, Eala's season is far from finished. She has already secured a confirmed place in the US Open, the final Grand Slam of the year, later this month. Arriving as a player who has already won a WTA title, reached a career-high ranking of No. 20, and built a fan base that tournament organizers are now planning entire schedules around. For Sabalenka, the loss to Alexandrova means an early exit from Toronto. But her ranking, built on 94 weeks at the top of the WTA standings, stays intact heading into the rest of the North American hardcourt swing and, eventually, into the US Open itself, where she will look to defend both her ranking and her recent Grand Slam form. For Bencic, the win over Eala pushed her into a quarterfinal against Goff, continuing a season that has already included a semifinal run at the 2025 Wimbledon Championships. So whichever side of the debate you land on, rankings or reach, one thing about Toronto in the first 2 weeks of August 2026 is not up for argument. Women's tennis right now has more than one storyline worth following: Sabalenka's title defense, Bencic's quiet, unglamorous consistency, and Eala's rapid rise are all pulling the sport in different directions at the same time. And every one of them will be back on court again before the month is out. What do you think actually defines greatness in tennis right now? Rankings or impact? Leave your answer in the comments below.